This patient who is going to be given a deprogramming splint, you can see now, close your mouth, man. Close your mouth, close your mouth, close your mouth. You can check the way his mandible deviates on closure. I'm going to guide it slowly into centric. Very slowly. Close. Don't resist. Very slowly. That's his midline here, and you can see how his jaw deviates on closure. Close very slowly, very slowly, very slowly, very slowly. Close. Stop. So you can look at the amount of midline deviation between the upper midline and the lower midline from open mouth to point of initial contact, and then into habitual occlusion. You can see how the mandible slides to the left on closure. Close fully, please. Close, 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 close fully, close fully, close fully. That's what I'm talking about. You can see that, right? This is the relation where the occlusion appears to be coincident, but open your mouth now. The mandible is actually deviating. Open. Keep it loose. Keep it loose. Don't put any force. Let me just guide it very gently myself. Don't resist. Don't resist. That's the very clear. You can see the amount of deviation. Keep it loose now. Keep it loose. Keep your mandible loose. Really loose. Swallow. Close very slowly. Don't put pressure. Let me guide it. That's the deviation. Very clear again. Continue closing. Close. 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 A horseshoe shaped wafer of wax is adapted onto the maxillary model, which is ready. All the blebs have been removed, the excess is trimmed, and this horseshoe shaped softened piece of wax is tested for fit on the maxillary model. Softened in water, placed on the maxillary arch, correct fit, and the patient's mandible is now slowly, right, guided into closure. Bite complete as hard as you can. Bite as hard as you can. So once you get a positive stop, open, remove the bite, chill it in cold water, and this bite, if you have noticed, is now taken in the patient's original occlusion. And once we take this bite, the next step is taking a Facebow record. Once the Facebow record is taken, then the casts are mounted on the semi-adjustable articulator with the possibility of increasing vertical height as desired, since the maxillary plane has been recorded. Step 2, which is the Facebow transfer step, where first we use the reference plane indicator to localize the campus plane. Now, as you already know, the purpose of taking a Facebow record is to orient the maxillary cast or the maxilla to the reference planes, which could be either the Frankfurt horizontal or the campus plane. Now, some articulators and Facebows are compatible with the orbital reference indicators, and some of them use the campus plane. As you can see that in the stratos that we use, you can use either the Frankfurt horizontal or the campus plane. Since I am very comfortable with the campus plane, I will now demonstrate using the campus plane as a point of reference. So this, take the reference plane indicator, put it on the tip of the maxillary incisor, and put it exactly in the center of the nose, and you can, from this side, you will be able to see the arrow. You can clearly see the arrow there. So place a marking in relation to the arrow here, which gives you a rough indication of the region close to the anterior nasal spine. So this denotes our campus plane or the alar tragus plane. So once this point has been identified, you can remove the reference plane indicator, carry out the bite registration, for which we take addition silicone and mix it the conventional way. Once the silicone is adequately mixed, place it on the bite fork. And gently place it onto the maxillary dentition, making sure of the midline. Apply firm pressure both in the front and at the back for complete seating. Once the putty is set, the excess can be trimmed off with a 22 number scalpel blade. Registering the bite is a very important part of the Facebow transfer because it allows us to orient the Facebow to the maxillary dentition. So this is the bite registration completed. At any time, if the fit is to be checked, it can easily be put back into the patient's mouth and checked. Begins with placing the bite fork with the silicone bite wafer in the patient's mouth. Stabilize it, please. And then taking the Facebow with the widths which have already been selected. Look down, please. Put the ear rods into the patient's ears. Make sure it's comfortable. Look down, please. Is this comfortable? Okay. Fine. Tighten it. So the width of the ear rods is now correct. Go down. Set the nose, please. Tighten it. Use the campus indicator. Place it on the point which has been marked previously. Tighten it. This is the 3D joint registration holder. The next step is connecting the 3D joint registration holder to the bite fork. Support the rods with your arms. Once it's tight, reposition the anterior point of reference and then connect the 3D registration holder into the Facebow. And lastly, tighten the Tommy screw. So now you have related the maxillary dentition to the plane of reference or the campus plane. Once this step is finalized, loosen the nose piece, loosen the reference plane indicator point, loosen the Facebow, remove, and the whole assembly can now be removed from the patient's mouth. This is a completed Facebow record. Now this has to be transferred to the semi-adjustable articulator. For this, you can loosen the nut in front, remove the 3D joint registration holder with the bite fork. The Facebow can now be removed and is no longer necessary. This is the relation of the maxillary dentition to the plane of reference. Lab mounting procedure, where the Facebow record of the patient, as was already shown to you, has been taken. And here we have the Stratos 300 semi-adjustable articulator, which is going to be used for mounting the models. We have the maxillary and the mandibular models, which have been based. This is the 3D joint registration, which is holding the bite fork in the relation to the maxillary plane. And this device that you see here is known as a 3D joint registration holder. This is a specialized device which helps to orient the 3D joint registration device to the semi-adjustable articulator without the need for bringing the Facebow to the articulator. So this gives us a great advantage in the sense that whenever cases are being sent to the laboratory, the Facebow need not accompany the models. If the laboratory has the same articulator, only the 3D joint registration device needs to be sent to the lab along with the models. Here we have the semi-adjustable articulator, the 3D joint registration with the bite fork, the joint registration holder, and these that you see here, upper and lower, these are known as magnetic plates which help to mount the models, which are used for mounting the models to the semi-adjustable articulator. The advantage is the models can be removed and placed back on the articulator without the need for any mounting plates. So multiple models can be mounted very rapidly on the articulator just by having one set of mounting plates. And these mounting plates, as you can see, have magnets in the center, and you stick these little buttons of metal onto the mounting plates, and this portion that I stick onto the magnetic mounting plate goes into the plaster or stone of the model. So when the model is removed, this is in the model and it helps to serve as a point of fixation or orientation. So for the maxillary model mounting, you first remove the incisor pin. You also remove the incisor table along with the incisor pin. These are not required for the maxillary model mounting. You connect the 3D joint registration holder to the articulator and connect the maxillary magnetic mounting plate. Place the stop, tighten, here this is a device which is used to place the bite fork support. Is this, and then take the 3D joint registration and put it into the joint registration holder. Tighten take the maxillary cast, place it on the white, and then adjust the movable joint and tighten it so that the model is held firmly. There is no chance of movement or distortion. Once this is tightened, place it and check the clearance between the cast and the magnetic mounting plate. That clearance will give us an idea as to the amount of stone or plaster which is required for mounting the models. Also remember that when we are using a semi-adjustable articulator, the centric has to be locked. All the adjustment features in the semi-adjustable have to be locked. Nothing has to be kept open. So centric has to be locked, and this is how it looks with the cast mounted onto the semi-adjustable articulator. You have the 3D joint registration device, the Tommy screw, in the holder, mounted in a way that is very easy and very quick. So now the next step is to place plaster or stone onto this model, close the articulator, adjust by removing the excess, and the maxillary cast is mounted. Once the maxillary cast is mounted, then we will proceed to the mandibular cast mounting. We begin the process of mounting the maxillary cast. Place dental stone onto the model. Make sure that the mix is of the right consistency. It should be too thick or too runny. Always ensure that a sufficient amount of stone is also placed on the magnetic mounting base in the region of the magnet to prevent any porosities in the mounting. Once adequate stone is placed, gently close the articulator till definitive contact is made. Mounted on the articulator. Once the maxillary cast is mounted and the stone is set, we can remove the 3D joint. We can remove the 3D joint holder from the articulator. We open the upper member now. Remove this. This is no longer required. And since we are going to be mounting the lower model on the magnetic base plate for the lowers, add a little Vaseline on the sides, not in the region of the magnet, to enable quick release of the model from the base plate. Place the magnetic base plate, tighten it, remove the support, replace the incisor pin with the incisor tail. The incisor pin has millimetric markings from 0 to 10. So the red marking is the marking at the baseline level. So place the incisor pin so that it corresponds exactly to the red marking. Close, center the table. Now place the wax bite that has been taken earlier. Model. The mandibular model is articulated with the maxillary using the wax bite, which has been already taken previously. Once the plaster of the stone is mixed, you place it here, and you decide on the quantum of material required depending on the clearance between the mandibular base and the magnetic mounting plate. So follow the same procedure as the maxillary mounting. Have the models mounted on the semi-adjustable articulator, and the advantage of mounting the models on a semi-adjustable articulator after taking a Facebow record is that the vertical dimensions can be increased or decreased as required without changing the closing arc of the mandible, which is a great advantage because especially in orthodontics when we are giving bite plates or splints, changing the vertical dimension becomes mandatory. So an increase in the vertical dimension does not lead to a loss of fit. So here you can see that once the articulator is closing in this particular relation, the aim of this particular exercise is to give the patient an anterior deprogramming splint to start off with, to deprogram the mandible and obtain the correct centric. For that, the desired amount of vertical opening can be given by adjusting the incisal pin in millimeters to the desired amount of opening. So now you can see that you have at least posteriorly you have about 2 millimeters of opening, which is increasing in the anterior region. So you have a complete open bite relation. You have adequate clearance for the splint to be fabricated. So the splint now, the marking for the splint. Generally, all the deprogramming splints are made in clear heat cured acrylic. The markings of the splint are that the acrylic should not extend beyond the pencil markings and the labial surfaces of the teeth. Posteriorly, the splint can be in this shape with adequate clearance. Once the diagram is finalized or the drawing is finalized on the model, the next step is removing the blebs from the model and doing the wax up. Once the wax up is done, the models are flasked and the splint is fabricated in heat clear acrylic. The anterior guidance and the canine guidance is adjusted by using cold cure acrylic on the heat cured splint, which will be shown slightly later. The aim of this splint is to ensure guidance of the anterior dentition while disoccluding the posterior dentition, so that the mandible is allowed to find its actual centric relation. Once the centric relation is determined and the mandible is deprogrammed, the next step of treatment can be the next step can include orthodontics, or if required, some kind of prosthodontic rehabilitation can also be considered if required for some patients. But in general, once the anterior deprogramming splint is completed, the next step sometimes for some patients is to make a 6-point contact splint, where the splint will also contact in the posterior region, or the functional cusps of the posterior dentition are made to contact the splint in stage 2, so that the joints can be loaded. That is the next step. Once the joints are loaded and the patient says that there is no discomfort in the temporomandibular joint, that particular position is taken as the correct position, and the teeth are worked to that position to ensure a stable temporomandibular joint apparatus. The completed wax up of the deprogramming splint, and when the models are brought together, you can see that the wax does not contact any of the posterior dentition on the left or the right sides. Once this splint is acrylized, trimmed and polished, then cold cure acrylic will be added to the anterior portion of the splint, and the anterior guidance will be then determined. So in the anterior region as well, you can see that we have given adequate clearance for adding cold cure acrylic. So now this particular splint is going to be flasked, dewaxed and cured with self-cured with heat-cured clear acrylic. After all the adjustments are done, all the trimming, basic polishing is carried out, the fit will be checked in the patient's mouth, and then the process of guidance will be demonstrated. So now we have the occlusal splint ready. As you can see, it's been made in heat cure acrylic, and after the initial trimming and polishing procedures are complete, the fit of the splint is checked on the patient's model. Fit appears to be satisfactory, and you can see that all the guiding surfaces are smooth. There is no acrylic added. The centric stops and the anterior guidance is now going to be added. After this, you take the splint off from the model and check the fit in the patient's mouth. That there is no anterior guidance now on this side. We have given some amount of posterior disocclusion. Once the guidance and the stops are given, then it becomes a true anterior deprogramming splint, where only the anterior teeth will touch and allow the mandible to slide freely without any posterior contacts. Open. Okay, so now we are mixing cold cure acrylic to add onto the plate in the region of the upper cingulum of the anterior teeth, upper cinguli of the anterior teeth, to obtain anterior guidance and to obtain a centric stop. So mix the acrylic, apply it on the cingulae, and then gently place this in the patient's mouth. Don't bite completely. ensure that all the anterior teeth, all the lower anterior teeth are touching the fitting surface of the splint, and the posteriors have to be disoccluded. You can clearly see that they are disoccluded here. Once the acrylic sets, gently remove the plate, apply articulating paper to the splint, and then remove all the interferences so that the mandible is free to move anteriorly as well as in lateral exposure. The goal of giving this occlusal splint is to remove the posterior interferences, stabilizing the temporomandibular joint, and at the same time ensuring anterior guidance. Once anterior guidance is achieved and the mandible comes to the desired position or its true centric, that true centric position can be recorded, and the occlusion can then be evaluated on a semi-adjustable articulator for further therapy. This further therapy may include orthodontics or prosthodontics or a combination of the two to achieve a stable occlusion in harmony with the temporomandibular joint apparatus. The aim is to have condyles seated in their most superior position in the glenoid fossa, along with a normal neuromusculature and the correct occlusion, which enables free movement of the mandible out of centric relation. Open. Open. So you can see now clearly, you can see the indentations of all the anterior teeth and the canines. So once the setting process is complete, the basic occlusal adjustments can be carried out and the splint can be delivered to the patient. So the splint can be evaluated now. You have the splint with tight anterior contacts and posterior disocclusion on the right and on the left side. So the next step is to apply the articulating paper and create anterior and lateral guidance. When it comes to articulating paper, this is the articulating paper I generally use. This is a 200 micron Bosch articulating paper which has this transcutaneous bonding agent on it, and this marks the teeth very well. Once you finish with the 200 micron articulating paper, then I generally like using the 8 micron shim stock, again from Bosch, which gives me the contacts properly. So first I will check the heavy contacts with the 200 micron paper. Open please. Do tap tap. Open. Right. Tap 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 tap. Open. Right. Tap 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 tap. Open. Okay. So we've got the gross interferences now, which I'm going to reduce. Tap there, okay? Open very gently. Tap tap. Tap tap. Tap tap. Okay. Open. Bite. Bite fully into. Open. Get it forward and close. Now get your jaw forwards, move your jaw forwards. You can see the interferences now. Bite comfortably into it. Yeah. Bring your jaw forwards, slide it forwards, slide it, in contact. Open. Bite comfortably into it. Move it till move it to the right. No. I want you to close like this. Okay? Open. Bite. Now move your jaw forwards. Slide it forwards. In chewing. Yeah. Bring forwards. Yeah. Good. Open. Bite now. Bite. Bite. Now move your jaw slowly to the right side. Move to the right. Slide your jaw to the right. Yeah, good. Open. Bite now. Yeah. Move your jaw slowly to the left. Move to the left. 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 Open. Bite now. Move your jaw slowly forwards. Open. These are the functional contacts which have to be adjusted. So you have the main centric stops well defined, and the markings in red have to be adjusted to allow the mandible to slide forwards and laterally. So these are the interfering contacts which have to be reduced. This is the completed splint after all the occlusal adjustments have been completed and the centric stop has been determined. So now you can see that when the patient is biting into centric with an anterior stop and an anterior guidance, there is posterior disocclusion on the right and on the left, and bring it in front and close. Okay. So when the patient is bringing his mandible forwards, you have to ensure that there are no occlusal interferences which prevent free movement of the mandible for anterior guidance or anterior slide. Bring your jaw slowly in the front, slide in front, in contact. Right. Bite. Move your jaw slowly to the right now. So you can see, ensure that there is some kind of canine guidance and the anteriors disocclude and they are not, the acrylic is not a source of interference for their free movement. Bite. Yeah. Move your jaw slowly to the left. Yeah. Right. So the jaw is able to move everywhere. To the left. Open. Bite. To the right. Bite. And anteriorly without interference. Bite. At the same time, you have a definite anterior guidance and posterior disocclusion. So this is the most basic of all the occlusal splints that we make, which is called an anterior deprogramming splint. After about 4 to 6 weeks of use of an anterior deprogramming splint, the next step would be to load the functional cusps. To load the functional cusps on the posteriors, all the posteriors, on the right and on the left. At the same time ensuring that there is no contact of the non-functional cusps. So while doing that, the temporomandibular joint gets loaded equally and the patient becomes comfortable, and at that particular point when the functional cusps are loaded and the anterior stops are determined, the centric can also be determined, the true centric. If the patient is comfortable in that particular position, then this particular record, the maxillomandibular record, is again taken with the help of a Facebow. It is mounted on a semi-adjustable articulator, and that particular occlusal relationship is checked on the articulator, and sometimes the patient may need orthodontics, may need modified splints, or may need prosthodontic rehabilitation to achieve a stable occlusion for that particular centric relation. So the goal of occlusal splint therapy is to remove painful symptoms, painful TMD symptoms, provided they are not pathological, determine the patient's true centric relation, obtain good anterior guidance, load the posterior teeth, load the functional cusps, and decide at that particular stage what further therapy is required. So the occlusal splint helps us to determine what further occlusal rehabilitation a patient requires. So sometimes using occlusal splints is mandatory for patients who have multifactorial problems like extensive wear, breakdown, loss of a single tooth or multiple teeth on one side, posterior cross bites or scissor bites. It is extremely difficult to determine the true centric relation, and sometimes because of a very deep bite or overclosure you might have symptoms of TMD also. So these symptoms can be largely alleviated by using well-designed occlusal splints, and in most cases when the vertical dimensions are freed up and the patient has good anterior guidance and posterior disocclusion, because posterior interferences are the number one culprit for TMDs. When you disocclude the posterior occlusion, get good anterior guidance and enable the condyles to find their true centric relation in the glenoid fossa, you will find that there is an immediate reduction in painful symptoms. So once the patient is comfortable and you have determined that this is the correct vertical dimension and that is the true centric with good anterior guidance, you can work the posterior teeth to this particular relation, and you can make sure that the dentition now remains stable and the TM joint symptoms are relieved.